This is Robert Price of the Bakersfield Californian. You're watching TBC Media's coverage of the 2018 primary election and our series of video interviews with candidates for contested offices in Kern County and the southern San Joaquin Valley. Today I'm with Ruben Macareno, sorry about that. One of three Democrats challenging the incumbent Republican Andy Vidak for the 14th Senate District seat.
Yes.
That's on June the 5th. The two top finishers in the four-way race, regardless of party affiliation, will move on to the November the 6th election. I'm also with James Berger, reporter, and Jen Lawitz, executive editor of the Californian, who will join us in a bit. The 14th Senate District covers portions of Fresno, Kings, Tulare, and Kern counties, including the cities of Arvin, Delano, McFarland, Shafter, Wasco, and a substantial portion of Bakersfield. It's 71% Latino, and Democrats enjoy a 20% registration advantage over Republicans. Ruben of Farmersville,
Yes.
You have been with the Coalinga Chamber of Commerce, and tell us about yourself.
Well, basically, I was raised in Farmersville, California, and I did attend school in Exeter High. I attended local community college at COS and then at Los Angeles City College as well. I moved on to Los Angeles after my community college stint. I worked for Congressman Roybal for a few months, and then I went on to Washington, D.C., where I worked for the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials. After that, I went on back to Los Angeles as I went back to school looking for a job. I landed a job at the Los Angeles Times. My first job at the Times was as a summer camp fund clerk, and part of my job was to raise funds for underprivileged children, which we raised about $1 million every summer. Thereafter, I pretty much left that area and went into the newsroom where I worked into the editorial hiring and development office. One of my jobs was to work with the editorial minority program, which we would work with many young college students so that they can have the experience to actually do the reporting in communities of color. We were in a shortage of it. The newsroom over in the entire country was in shortage of those type of journalists. So it was my job to make sure that they were introduced to the right people, given the right criteria as far as education, that sort of thing from within the newsroom. Once they finished, they moved out, and now they're flying very high everywhere across the country. I'm very proud to say that because I was part of that process. Eventually, I moved on to the photography department where I was their administrator. I eventually decided to come back to the Valley when there was a family incident. I had a brother who was a community activist. And was a school board president in Farmersville, in fact. Very controversial. He was recalled. He moved to the Central Coast, and he was murdered. And so when that happened, I had decided to come back to the Central Valley, and I had always had a love for politics, and I've always had a love for newspapers, and I think the combination of the two kind of set me up to be involved locally. I became the founder of the Latino Democrats of Central California. I eventually became the chair of the Tulare County Democratic Party, and many times I was a headhunter looking for other candidates to run for office. And I'm here today because I feel I'm the most qualified person to run for this office.
Well, thank you. In California, we're a unique place because we have a Democratic supermajority, which of course you would be joining, and that's one way the state's divided, Republican and Democrat, as all states are. But it's also divided in that there's an urban component and a rural component.
Absolutely.
And the urban component, very different, different priorities. Much of the wealth, education is concentrated there. The rural part of California is sort of left out sometimes. What do you do to bring up the profile and highlight the needs of the rural part of California?
I think it's very important for a senator to actually be able to have the ability to coalition, to not only be a cheerleader for the region, but to also explain to their colleagues why it's important that this part of California is important to the entire economy of the state and of the country as well. Because we are situated in such a place where ag is not only important to the local economy, but to California, then we need to be able to be that cheerleader. Now, one of the issues that happens in the Central Valley, we are overlooked by the metropolitan areas, and this is no secret. Both Republicans and Democrats understand that they have the numbers. So it's very important to have those relationships today. and I say today because I have been part of politics and I do have relationships in Sacramento. I do know state senators. I do know state constitutional officers. I do know people that are outside of the lobbying areas as well. Aside from that, I think it's important to be able to reach out from what you got from your experience. I had the ability of working with entities such as Los Angeles Times to even here locally with Proteus, which is a farm working agency to help people get out of the farm working areas into jobs outside the farming community. And one of the things that I've learned most about all of this is that we do lack education, we do lack training, we do lack the attention, the funding to actually help a lot of entities and communities. So those are the sort of things that we need to talk to our colleagues about. And that's what I would do. I would coalition and I would be a cheerleader for the area.
One of the big issues right now in California and the nation, as a matter of fact, is immigration. It always has been and maybe always will be, but especially right now it's unusual because we've got sort of a divide between the state of California, which is a sanctuary state status, and the federal government, which is going suddenly very aggressively. And, of course, it affects people in the 14th District very much so. Latinos, both documented and undocumented, and the growers, many of whom are Republican, yes, supporters of perhaps your opponent in the general election. They need workers.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of things going on here, a complicated dynamic. Tell me about your thoughts there.
Well, what I believe is that we do need the workers. I mean, one of the sad things that will happen is that we will start losing crops, or we'll see prices going up, and that's going to come out of our pocket when we talk about, a lot of families in the Central Valley or in the district itself don't have the income or the money to even sustain themselves now. So now they're having to pay more for produce because, or not having the jobs to bring to the household. These are very important as far as for the worker and for the farmer themselves. They need to have a livable situation because if they don't have the ability to have their crops picked, they're going to have a lot of losses. So we need to be able to come together somehow and figure out how we can still be within the lawful means of, I'm a realist. This is the economy, this is the political atmosphere we're in. So how are we going to be able to work together to have these workers to be able to pick our crops, at the same time be within the jurisdictions of law, of federal, whatnot. I think it's very important. Aside from the fact that, we don't want communities to be in fear. We want communities to be robust, engaging, and we don't want them, quote unquote, in the shadows, as they say. So we need to bring them out, and they'll only come out if they feel safe. So we need to figure out how we're going to do that.
What are some of the big issues in the 14th district right now?
Well, for me, I think, and listening to many of the constituents, is jobs. Jobs has always been a big issue because, even though we're an ag economy, there's times when we have ups and downs in our ag. There's, the harvest is good and the harvest is bad. We have communities that perhaps have 30% unemployment to 40% unemployment. That's a big hit to a particular community. So we need to figure out how we're going to bring certain jobs into the area. When I was privy, or I was actually privileged to be in a situation where I was representing the Silicon Valley tech industry, and I sat with the Fresno State leadership and talking about how we're going to bring these type of entities into the Central Valley. Now, the Bay Area is being, they can't house any more interns or employees, and they're a big magnet for engineering type students. But the cost as they come in, they just can't find housing, it's too expensive. So this is an alternative where they can come. So in talking with the leadership at Fresno State University is how can we bring in a interested party and build on that, and at the same time build to create these type of jobs that will attract other industries. Now, this is thinking outside the box in an ag industry environment. So we need to do more of that. In that particular case, I see that would attract other industry, not just more jobs, but better paying jobs as well. And as well as build a strong pool of educated workers, and also pave a way for us to have a better relationship through our K through 12 districts, so that they have a relationship with this new entity that perhaps will be coming to Fresno State. So we need to think outside the box more.
Yeah. James Berger, have you got a question?
So you I think are well known a little bit north of us, but you're not as well known to the average voter here. but we do represent about 28% of the voters in the 14th, as well as Kern County being the most strong of the four counties in Democratic registration here. So you kind of need to get some help from Kern County to win this thing.
Absolutely.
How are you reaching out to kind of build a relationship with the voters in Kern County?
Well, one of the things that I have done, because I was working with the Chamber of Commerce and because I've been involved in many things, I didn't have the opportunity to come, although I have in the last 3 months or so have done a lot of research, a lot of footwork, and talking to folks about Kern County, what are their needs, because really having that listening ear of and getting familiar. I was actually able to attend a meeting in Arvin, and they talked about water, for instance. They have an issue with TCP and what have you, and I think that's a humongous issue, but it's no different than what's happening in other parts of the county. So what I have learned in terms of the area, I have learned that we have a lot of similarities in terms of our issues, the unemployment rate, the water issue, jobs, etc. So in coming out to Kern County, I have been able to meet up with some people that are actually supportive and are actually listening to the fact that we do need a working senator. We do need someone that understands the individual who actually is a son of the San Joaquin Valley and can actually deliver. One of the things that I say to most people out here and in the entire district is that, to be anchored in Sacramento and to deliver, you need to be able to see and hear the voice of those that are being most affected. Now, that is one of the reasons why I started my journey early on, because I wanted to hear those voices and I wanted to hear or see the faces of the folks being affected. So in doing that, coming out here, the folks I've met in Bakersfield recently not only are passionate about having their message said, but they want to join the team. And our team is prepared to get ready in about a couple of weeks to come out to, beginning with Arvin, and we're going to work our way up. So it's very important that we get all voices in there, and Kern is one of those, absolutely.
What sets you apart from the other Democrats? We know that all three Democrats have some gripes with Andy Vidak, the incumbent, but you've got two Democrats who are opponents who are not unqualified. What sets you apart?
Well, what sets me apart from my Democratic opponents, or even the senator, to be quite frank with you, I'm the only candidate from all four, I being one of the four, that has actually been a parent, that actually been a spouse, that understands what it's like to be able to have to provide for someone under a household. They actually understands how it affects you when someone in that household is ill. How it affects you if someone under that household is not employed or is not making ends meet. It affects everybody. So as far as I'm concerned, I think it's important that when you take this type of ethics up to Sacramento, and this is what I talk about here, seeing the face and hearing the tone of voice and also living it is very important. Now, aside from that, my experience is very diverse. I've worked in Washington. I worked at the LA Times, where I've learned about government ethics and transparency. I think it's very important. I don't think that anyone that's worked in the newspaper industry understands how important it is that we need to keep government on their toes. And I feel very good and confident that I've been on the other side, and I understand how important that is. It's so easy, I believe, that without that kind of training or background, it's easy to get lost in the process. So I bring my nonprofit and advocacy, media background, business background. So I believe I'm well-rounded in comparison to all of my other candidates.
I think Jim Lawitz has a question.
Yes.
Ruben, have you ever held elected office before?
Unless you're talking about student body president at several colleges and high school, no, I have not. But I have led organizations. And one of the things that when I'm asked that question is like, well, you never held office, why not? Well, it was my choosing. I could have been a school board member. I could have been a city councilman at a smaller, But I believe that there's folks, as being a headhunter for folks to attain these offices, I look at who is best situated to actually represent the individuals of that community. I'm here, I'm there, I'm everywhere. So there's a lot of other folks that really are planted into that community, and I think that's very important. I'm more diverse as being a party and regional officer for the party and also being involved in many organizations. I jump from here to here to here to here and a variety of organizations that I feel that perhaps I'm not suited for that kind of local office, but I am suited for state or federal office.
Some might say that you haven't yet paid your dues. What would you say to them?
Well, I have paid my dues, and I have paid my dues since the third grade. And I say that because being involved in community means not necessarily being elected to office, but being involved and entrenched in the community that you serve. If that means being a student body officer from high school to college, or if that means that you're being a president of an organization in a community, trust me, there's a lot of work that goes into that. You know, I have my son, he's a musical theater student up in New York. And so being the parent that I am, I have donated my time or given my time to help there on the stage. And I see how folks really get entrenched in that community and how they really do all they possibly can. They raise money, they have their meetings, they do the production costs. All of this is paying your dues. Now, in the political sense of the word, I've also paid my dues because I have also worked for many campaigns. I've worked for a supervisorial campaign in Tulare County. I've also worked for mayoralship in Los Angeles. I've worked in Washington, D.C. So I believe that I've paid my dues, absolutely.
One of the big issues in the valley is housing. How can you address the housing needs of the 14th district?
Well, you know, housing, it's interesting because they're, statewide, we have issues with affordable housing. And I think in the district, people say, well, it's only in the urban areas. I don't think it's only in the urban areas. I think it's also in the central area. And because we don't have the same type of income that those urban areas have, just because our housing is much cheaper doesn't mean it's affordable. And so one of the things I believe that we need to address is how are we going to have multi-family housing as opposed to single housing? And if we have single housing, are we going to use self-help enterprises? Are we going to give them the funding that they need to provide more housing to those communities that actually need that hand up? Now, I would say yes, because of the nature of our constituency, we would need to be able to provide those type of grants, if you will, say through self-help enterprises. So those are one of the things that I think that a senator should champion when they're up in Sacramento. And when I say champion, I mean represent the needs that are actually existing right now, today. How are we going to address those? And that's what you share with your legislators, your colleagues. This is what's happening in the Central Valley. You might not know it because you're in the urban area, but this is real. These are the folks that put the food on your table, or these are your teachers or your nurses or doctors. Well, the doctors are doing okay, but these are the folks that don't get the same amount of pay, that want that American dream just like everybody else, and they should be afforded it. In the Central Valley, we live in the Central Valley. There's not much we can do until we build up our economic base, and I think that we need to be able to support that type of grant giving to places like self-help enterprises.
James?
Yeah, so right now, Andy Videk, and similarly in the 21st Congressional District, David Valdeo, they represent these heavily Democratic Latino districts as Republicans. What are you going to do to engage Latino Democratic voters to really connect with this race, connect with this election season, and get out to vote, and hopefully for you, in support of you?
Right. Well, you know, one of the issues I believe that one of the reasons why we don't have a Democratic senator is because of the way we approach voters. You know, when we approach voters, we approach them like, you're Latino, you're a Democrat, you're going to vote our way. Absolutely not. The voter wants to be looked upon as a person, an individual. So, and I think that the senator has had the ability to say, hi, I'm Andy Videk, I'm a nice guy, you know, and they buy it. They like him. And, you know, who's not going to like someone that actually sees them as an individual as opposed to a vote? And I think that's where us Democrats have had the inability to do on a very short-term basis. And for myself, one of the reasons why I started early is because I wanted to do that engagement. I wanted to do that one-on-one. I wanted to see their voice. I wanted to hear what are the issues. And I think that that's the one thing I need to be able to I need to be able to engage. The reason the senator is a senator, because he reflects what the folks are like in the district. The district is somewhat moderate to conservative. That is and regardless if they're Democrat or regardless if they're Latino, but there is like a moderate to conservative touch to it, and we need to recognize that. So that's the number one thing, is to recognize what the voter is like, and appreciate them for who they are.
Talk a little bit about healthcare in the district, both in terms of healthcare coverage for your constituents, your prospective constituents, and also as far as the presence of doctors and medical personnel in the valley, the shortages.
Well, it's it is an issue because we have way too many physician assistants. Not that I think they're great that they're here, but we don't have enough doctors. We have too much chronic illness in the area. We could talk about valley fever, diabetes, asthma, cancer. So we do need, the needs that we have is like a research hospital. I know there's talk about that happening, but we do need one. It's absolutely necessary. We need to be able to figure out how we're going to be able to bring healthcare up. A lot of people in the valley that can't afford it, they go outside the valley, Santa Barbara, San Francisco, LA. My mother herself, she goes to Los Angeles once a month. And we've been doing that for the last 10 years. And because when she was getting care here, it just wasn't working. And I know many others that do it, but there's a lot of folks that don't have that ability. And so that is a major issue, particularly because we do have many that are sick today. They might be able to see their doctor, their physician assistant, and sometimes we don't get the right diagnosis, and that causes a bigger problem. So healthcare is very important. It's great that we have it, and some folks have it, but I think the quality of healthcare needs to improve, and that's something that we do need to talk about. That's something that we need to bring up in Sacramento a lot more than just having healthcare. So that's something I would do. I would champion that.
Yeah. Okay.
What are some of the structural things you have in place in your campaign to get that grassroots engagement, to get the fundraising ready that you need to do to really get your message out there? Do you have the structure in place that's going to help you really make an impact, not only just in this primary, but in the general election beyond it?
Absolutely. Well, having been employed with the Kalinga Chamber of Commerce didn't give me a lot of that, because usually with the chamber and politics, we don't like to mix it up. So I had to make the decision to leave the chamber so that I can actually pursue this. And in doing so, I was already late in the process. Now, one of the things, though, in talking to many folks is that many folks are so disenchanted with politics as usual, having, the special interests, unions, et cetera, donate. But the sad part of it is that's what you really need to actually get your message out. So I had just acquired I had a campaign manager, but he was a novice and he was just starting and learning, and he did okay. But now I got another campaign manager who has been very effective and starting to set up the apparatus. Now, we're just starting that process. We're starting to get folks in place. We're starting to do all that we need to do. Our focus is November, because at this time we're already late. My job is to be out there and talk to folks like yourselves, or talk to chambers of commerce or Rotary clubs to get the word out, to get my message out that I can be your voice, I can be your champion, I can do the job and do that convincing. The other apparatus, unfortunately, a little late, but it's one of them, throw the dice and let's see what happens. But I believe that I have the messaging intact, because when I do have that contact and I do make those meetings and I talk to individuals, they get on board.
One of the big issues in the district, again, is water, clean drinking water. Yeah. It's been going on for a long time. What kind of change can you make?
Well, water is such a complex issue, right? I mean, because water is, for instance, Mother Nature provides us the water. So it's, one of the big issues as far as water, as I had explained earlier, in Arvin, for instance, they had their issue with TCP, and there's in Seville, they have also contaminants in their water. We can go pinpoint every part of the district, and this district is really loaded with that. I think one of the things that the state and the counties need to really focus on where those contaminated wells are and actually take quick action. I think that in legislation, perhaps we can probably do something in regards to when water is found to be contaminated. Perhaps we should give them a period of time in which we should address it and address it with funds, that, for instance, a study, whatever we need to do to follow up. How are we going to clean this water, or are we going to tap this water and go somewhere else? Now, water, for instance, one of the issues that we have with water is also the districts. Now, the districts, even though on the ground we have, you got one district here, you have another district here, but the groundwater is, you pull from one source and district. It's really you're pulling from everybody else. So we need to restructure how we have our districts set up. I think that we need to be able to set up our districts where it's more of a basin as opposed to city districts or community districts, because I think that that's where it gets convoluted. There's not enough regulation in terms of, I think there's not enough regulation as to who can pump so much water, who can inject so much chemicals into our water. Every district is independent of that. But if you soil one kind of water well, you're going to soil the other districts as well, or eventually it will be soiled as well. So we need to be able to be more in contact as to, or more, not in contact, but in governing over that type of water. And I believe the best way of doing that is to consolidate water districts, because we need to be able to have more control into what's going into the water and what's being contaminated. So I think that's probably step one.
What, to be fair, is Andy Vidak's biggest success, and for the sake of more fun, what is his biggest failure?
His biggest failure, to be quite honest, is that I believe that he sees the district as, in my opinion, this is my opinion, I believe that he sees this district as a one-issue district. I don't believe that...
That issue being?
Ag, anything related to ag, water, ag, farming, all of that. Yeah. When there's so many other issues that need to be addressed, I think that, in my opinion, is his failure. And I think that failure exists because I don't think he is engaged enough in the entire diversity of his community. So I think that's his failure.
Yeah. And to be fair, you want to compliment him on anything?
He's a nice guy. And I've only heard that. I've only heard that he's a nice guy. I hear it from everywhere. When I've gone meeting with folks, that's the first thing they say. Yeah. Oh, he's a nice guy. I've gone to, there was a drinking hoe in Tulare County, and they say, oh, yeah, he comes here. He's a very nice guy. I went to Lamont. Well, a lot of people like Andy. He's a very nice guy. So I have to say that. I think he's a good person. I have nothing to do with that. But, yeah, and that's good. That's good for an elected official to make people feel like you're a good folk, but delivery is important, too.
Can you stand up to him on the nice guy front?
Absolutely. I'm right there.
Well, there you have it. This is Robert Price of the Bakersfield Californian, thanking you for watching this TBC Media video profile of a candidate in the 2018 primary election for the 14th State Senate District. Check back at Bakersfield.com. We'll have video profiles of many candidates, including all of four in this particular race. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.